My first wife and I, Jean, well, we were, you could say, intensely religious. And finding religion, Christianity as we found it, the tiny corner that we knew of, very unsatisfactory. We were looking for a new way of life. I mean, we lived in Essex, which is the sort of southeast of England, east of London, near the coast, you know. We were looking now for a lifestyle, if you like, something remote. I mean, we weren't retirement sort of age. We were, she was 5.5 years older than me, and I was, we were somewhere around 30. And, well, we found advertised this place. I don't know where it was. Well, one of them was, for argument's sake, a country place in something like Yorkshire. And, I mean, it was extremely rural, on a road, you know. When you got to it, you were in the middle of absolutely nowhere. There may have been a neighbour somewhere nearby, I don't know. But I remember it was sort of autumn when we were there. And I looked at this sort of, well, a bit like in New Zealand, housing. It was, looked as though it was largely made of wood and glorified shed come beach hut come caravan, really. Had a bit of garden. I mean, might have had an acre or something. I mean, I just thought, no, I think the isolation might be a burden, not a gateway into life at all. There's another place we looked up in Aberdeenshire, would you believe? I mean, that's north of Scotland. I mean, it's beyond Glasgow and Edinburgh, you know, it's further up. And it was out in something called, I've got a feeling it was called the Black Forest, or something forest. I think it was Black Forest. I mean, it was just hillside. There wasn't a tree for miles. It had all been used for the British Navy in probably the, I don't know, 19th century or something, you know, 18th century even. And it was cattle country, I suppose. I'd no idea, of course, but it was an experience of a sort of premonition of, well, the Waikato, really. New Zealand generally, which is strangely one of the, I think, the only westernized country that is reliant on agriculture, certainly in its exports. I mean, you could say there's not really much in the way of manufacturing at all in New Zealand. And the climate's much better here than Aberdeen, I can tell you. And this was a stone cottage, you would say. And it was stone. You could, I mean, it was not covered or something. It was stone walls. And gosh, it was like living as cattle. And, well, I seem to remember it was winter time there. And I thought, no, I'm not living up here. This is embracing poverty. We went back down south. I don't mean we've moved up there. We were only up there looking around, checking out this place. We must have stayed in what we would call a homestay now, bed and breakfast or something. It's a bit of a dream now. I can't fix it in history. It's more historicity to me. But we went happy to be living where we were. Pretty sure we were living in Brenton-on-Sea at the time. Tiny, snobby, affluent retirement seaside town. Very snobby. We were in the poorest housing in the poorest street. Wife was a social worker and I was a teacher, I think. Yep. At war with the local religion church, you know. We didn't think it was at all genuine. And they were disturbed at our example, I can tell you. Yeah. You could say we were self-righteous. But I think that's because they were self-righteous. And we just looked like a reaction to such. They had managed to combine materialism with, I was going to say something of the Christian story, but I should have said something of the Christian religion. And in fairness to them, the two things seemed to match up very well. They were quite happy with it till we came along. They felt less assured after knowing us. In some ways, they were torturous years of eternally wanting to go into a ministry which unbeknown to us was completely the wrong direction. But we wouldn't take no for an answer. Well, to say we got disillusioned was, to say the least of things. And to say also that, well, I started, I had something like 7-year-long project of harmonizing the 4 Gospels, which you would have thought was an extremely arrogant task to be dedicated to. And we lived a spirituality that looked more like well, New Age lifestylers without the property. Just an end-terraced house. Very small, 2-bedroomed end-terraced house. In fact, when I saw the way it had been adapted inside, I wasn't at all clear it was very safe. Well, we put double glazing in it and tiny extension on it, the sun lounge, and I mean tiny. Enough room for two people, almost. And our pets, and our first son, Lawrence, and the school at the bottom of the garden, which just the other side of the fence. Yeah. It's a dream now, just a dream. Vanishes into the past. You can revisit it any time you wish, if you wish. Generally, you don't. Oh, and the other project I was on was The Godly Life. I think I'm historizing now. I think I got to 400 A4 pages. Each page was a particular thought, and it had to be done in one A4 page. Originally, of course, handwriting, but increasingly it became hand typing direct. Before the days of this sort of technology I'm holding now, the mobile phone, and dictating into it. I mean, but I'm still the same sort of thing, aren't I? And mentioning it and coming to mind, I would love to do a review of what I wrote then. It sounds as endless as the 4,000 recordings I've done here, isn't it? But well, I'm looking to a long retirement. I need something to do, aren't I? Am I going to hang around in this universe that long? Love you, Heavenly Dad. Love you. Just thank you for your company, dearest one. Dearest, dearest, dearest one. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Do you know, I slightly depressed myself reviewing that past. Thank goodness they didn't seem such difficult times at the time. And there were many blessings of seeing God in our life and provision. I mean, many blessings. It was also a time of coming across Merlin Carruthers' book, Prison to Praise. And, well, that really opened the miraculous to us. That was astonishing. Afraid we were even more determined to get into the ministry and carried on making such attempts. All of them at great cost, really. It was astonishing that our marriage survived in such, well, spiritual hardship. Yeah, really. And it was tempestuous at times. And very discouraging at times. And yet we were both, of course, religiously, if you like, determined to be right with one another. Complicated, of course, with having a child. Became some source of conflict between us. some good relationships with people. My friend Len, who was still practicing as chief rating officer for a London borough, commuting with me often on the train. He'd go up to London, I'd just change at some point on the railway line. Shenfield or something. Yeah. We were hard up. Mortgage and so on. Yep. Partly too because we were aiming to work less. We worked sort of each of us 3 or 4 days a week. Me typically 4. My wife typically 3. I think almost always 3. Didn't really believe in the wife having to work, you know what I mean? Yeah. Look, I won't write an autobiography, don't worry. If you want a really good autobiography, I can commend to you Paramahansa Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. And that's not an autobiography, really. It's an account of all the amazing people in his life. It's an astonishing book. Changed the lives of an enormous number of people. The most read autobiography of all time. Yeah, amazing. Yes, my first marriage was a time of Merlin Carruthers, Prison to Praise, and Paramahansa Yogananda, Autobiography of a Yogi. My own writings, Godly Life and The Harmony of the Gospels, gave me tremendous encouragement. And Living by the Sea, Brinton-on-Sea, Walton-on-the-Naze. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. Well, dear one, the point of such a review of an autobiography, so to speak, only to demonstrate to you that your path to God, well, in hindsight, is a bit torturous, and at the time it was very difficult at times. And life here in this universe is, goodness, far more difficult than I have suffered. Unless it's all relative, and relatively speaking, same highs and lows and comparisons. And in a sense, of course, our childhood is not honourable. It's the grace of God and his kindness that continues to abide with us unto life eternal. And wonderful and kind that is. Thy loving kindness is sweeter than life to me. Thy loving kindness is sweeter than life. My lips shall praise thee, thus will I bless thee. Thy loving kindness is sweeter than life. Yeah, I think of my mum's childhood, poverty and hardship. And she was very bright, which means you wrestle all the more with reality, I think. And I think of my dad's childhood, brought up by two very Victorian women, and his dad, good chap, but distant. Perhaps not as distant as Dad was with me. No, possibly not. But you know, when he came back from the war, things weren't as he'd hoped, and he couldn't get a job, and life was difficult, and he actually helped a chap in a local garage, you know, mending cars for a while. I mean, he became manager of a stockbrokers, of course, later in London. Big noise, little noise actually, compared to the owners of such businesses and deep state. Yeah. He said, be a big fish in a little pool, not a little fish in a big pool. In London he was a little fish really in a big pool. But in his, where he was living at home, you know, where we lived, he was the best house in town. Worked in the city and manager of stockbrokers and so on. Yeah. And both of them a tragic life in a way. I mean, Dad going back to his first wife for the last couple of years of his life. I mean, bless him. But you know, what a disastrous marriage in many ways. Well, apart from me, of course. Yeah, as he saw it, all part of the disaster, I expect. And Mum continuing to hate him for decades after his death, and living alone and dying alone. Oh my Lord, how could this happen? I can tell you, Marshall, it's that you love goodness and not that which brings sorrow. Welcome to the kingdom of heaven. Thank you, Heavenly Dad. So that this recording doesn't become tiresome, let me be brief. I mean, you would say my major mistake was reacting to Dad's treatment of Mum as I saw it when she was ill, out of hospital, and shouting at him in the street. If I hadn't done that, well, I would have resulted in being an affluent, probably world economist. Dad's affluence, my achievement, and a materially very good standard of living. A success, you would have said, in worldly terms. But died not knowing God. Which was the right path to take then. Did what I thought was right. In a sense, I was right. But probably not my action. But it brought the life that I had. come to know God. How extraordinary from such beginnings. A very secular boy in a very secular home. Well, except Mum was loving and kind, and Dad was faithful and true. And I was in earnest. Was that the recipe to find God? Well, apparently it was. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.